Good morning. My name's Leah Haymond, and I'm going to be doing a talk on It's All Good. So I'm relatively new to New Thought community. I started attending a little over a year ago, and some months with change. And it's been wonderful. This is my first talk, the first message for our service. I'm very happy to be here sharing what I have to talk about today, which is, like I said, it's all good. I'm in our first year of religious classes right now, Science of Mind 1. We're wrapping up the class, and I'm here to talk about an idea, a concept, a vision of the world that sticks with me in this class and that I've worked with over the last, 8 months or 10 months that we've been in class. And it's the idea that we live in a perfect universe, that God is all there is. God has created this world through mind. We are co-creators with God. Everything's as it should be. Everything's perfect. And everything's just absolutely wonderful. And I'm here to talk about this because that's wonderful. It feels so good just to say that. And then I have daily life and I experience suffering, and I look around and I see suffering. And my profession is in the field of mental health. I'm a clinician. I do therapy, and I work with people who are having an experience they would like to change. So then it becomes the question, like, if it's all good, why do we keep experiencing suffering? So that's like the struggle that I've had, and it's been a great struggle. There's a couple ways I am aware of going with this, like the thought that we could be in denial that there is suffering and tell people, like, you're not suffering, everything's good, everything's perfect, everything is as it should be. And if someone is having a terrible experience in this life, that's not supportive or helpful to say that. Things like, if you're just more positive, everything just work out. There's a little bit more to it. Here at New Thought, we practice spiritual mind treatment, which is beyond the scope of my talk. But in a nutshell, it is uncovering the divine truth of everything being all good through a specific format. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit more in detail. So these questions get summed up in the book by Ernest Holmes, The Science of Mind. In the intro, section 4, he says, should we refuse to look at sickness, poverty, and unhappiness? That's not what we're discussing. We will not refuse to help the helpless or lift up the fallen, but we will refuse to wallow in the mud because of our sympathies. And then to quote him again in chapter 11 of the same book, The Science of Mind, we already live in a perfect universe, but it needs to be seen mentally before it can become a part of our experience. Every problem is primarily mental, and the answer to all problems will be found in spiritual realization. This is a very high truth, something that I'm not connected with at all times. But the more I get connected with it, like participating in Science of Mind and meditating and being in this community, the more I'm able to have that kind of perspective, a little bit higher perspective on things. So how to do this? Well, I want to tell you a little bit about my spiritual background and my professional training. I'll start with the professional training first. I specialize in a form of therapy called dialectical behavior therapy. And the dialectics is recognizing when we hold two beliefs that seem to be contradictory. For example, it's all good and there's suffering in the world. And they're both true in a way because it's happening, but there's this dialectical tension. And in this DBT that I do, we synthesize the information until we come up with a higher perspective on the subject. And isn't it wonderful how truths align? Science of Mind teaches take a higher perspective. DBT takes a higher perspective. You'll see the same truths resonate in different areas when it's a very high truth. I don't think it gets much higher. It doesn't get any higher than it's all good. And in preparing this talk, I realized that I had been envisioning this dialectical balance like a seesaw, because that's the metaphor. And I was thinking there was like a balance, like you come to the in-between, but I realized that's not always the way that we resolve a dialectical imbalance. We can use metaphor to understand the relationship of these two things. And the metaphor is light. So light is found in many religious practices to be the symbol of divinity, of truth, of love. In science, they have the Big Bang Theory, light. So let's talk about light as taught by Ernest Holmes. Light is a power, and darkness is the absence of light. And I hear a lot of this in the Christian tradition too, love the sinner, hate the sin. Anyway, so the darkness is the absence of light. So something's getting in the way. And in Science of Mind, Ernest Holmes teaches it's thought that gets in the way. It's human thought. It's not God. It's us that's creating these structures that are blocking the light. And he makes a good point of saying that darkness is not an entity. It has no power. It's not like in the horror movies where the darkness comes in and like sucks up all the light, and then the bad thing's gonna happen. That's not the nature of reality. You just turn on the light and darkness no longer exists in that space. So spiritual mind treatment is a way of doing that. I'll take this moment to say namaste, which my understanding of that is the divine spark within me recognizes and greets the divine spark within you, which is a great practice to remember to look at the spiritual truth of myself and another person. We do that in spiritual mind treatment, and that's the truth. That's getting back in touch with that perfect essence, that divine spark within each of us. And it's not that the spark is a small part of who we are. And I'm pointing to my forehead because in my belief system, the spark is seen clairvoyantly inside the head. It's that we tend to look at the person as a body, and within that we see the spark. But I really do conceive of it as God is manifesting us, has created us, we're an extension of God, and then that light comes through us and then creates this body and this world. So why so much suffering in the world? A note on that. We're not personally responsible for all the structures that are set up in this world that cause suffering. As divine beings, we may have unlimited power. As we are humans living this lifetime, we have to relearn that. We have to practice seeing others with the light, seeing where there's structures, either our own attitudes or things we've learned from other people, or the way systems are conducted, or organizations, religions, policies, governments put up a lot of structure that tell us how to think, and a lot of them are very destructive and block the light. So we work on what comes up that needs to be worked on, one thing at a time, and we shine the light on that, and it clears out like magic. But magic is what we call technology we don't understand. And spiritual mind treatment is a technology we understand really well in this church, and I'm still learning. I'm very grateful. Another thing about myself, my main form of meditation for a long time, maybe 6 years, was meditation on loving kindness. And then for 6 years I did Raja Yoga, meditation on the soul. And that helped me get in touch with love and with wisdom. And in dialectical behavior therapy, we seek higher truth by balancing our emotions and our rational mind. And in spiritual mind treatment, gotta have the love. That's the power. The connection with all, the connection with God, the spiritual connection, the love, that's what makes our treatments work. So it's a great practice to practice loving in whatever way works for you. For me, it's a loving kindness practice. And focus on the divine spark within. That connects me to source. That may or may not work for you. Whatever works for you, keep it up. So wrapping up my session, let's see, I have one more quote. Chapter 9, when we become conscious of our oneness with universal good, beliefs in evil, sin, sickness, limitation, and death tend to disappear. And isn't that what the great mystics and avatars and spiritual leaders have taught us? It's all good. It's okay. In fact, we don't even die. We're eternal beings. This human death is a small part of us. It's all good. And that lets me know that even with death, it's all good. But we have to take that higher perspective. The best thing we can do while we're here and having experiences of suffering is to love each other and to support each other. So, in closing, I like to say I love you. I've been loving you for years because my loving kindness had me maximizing how much love I can send out to the world, to every person, every being, the entire earth. So I do love you, and I see you. I salute the divine within you, which is your true nature. And in wonderful moments like this, in this beautiful sanctuary, doing a talk, I become more aware that it is all good. Thank you. You're blessed.